you that it was in those days. It was the days of long service awards. And he bought me my Crombie coat and my briefcase, and I went to work for White Horse Whiskey. So I was a booze salesman, probably still am at heart. And I ended up working for what's the largest drinks company in the world, Diageo, for the first 14 years of my life. Interesting, it's a bit like Tony. You go on the big corporate world, and Ian to a degree, big corporate world, and then thought, yeah, I'm not really comfortable with this, so I'm going to go off and set up my own business, fool that I was. And I set up a little training company in 1997, and the Forum of Private Business helped me to do that. There's a lot of practical support. They were my phone answering service and took my mail in and things like that. And yeah, you start off from the kitchen, and it's very hand to mouth, and I couldn't get used to the fact that instead of a steady check coming in once a month, there'd be the peaks and troughs that we've all had as small businesses, and you think, shit, when's the next bit of money coming from? And cut a long story short, I ended up running 6 different businesses at the end of the time, one of which I sold in 2012. And the Forum of Private Business approached me, and I got a young family, and I'd been travelling all over Europe and all sorts of things, and not really seen my daughter particularly grow up. And he said to me, would you come and do a bit of consultancy work? So I thought, right, I'll go and work for the Forum for 6 months. That would be good. That was 10 years ago, and I'm now the CEO of the place. But it hooked me. And the reason it hooked me is because what we predominantly do is help small and micro businesses with the practical stuff. I'm not really a lobbyist. In fact, anybody that's seen me operate knows that I'm not a lobbyist. I tend to put my foot in it most of the time and spend a lot of time irritating politicians. But we're there to represent. We're there to represent. My job is to take what's going on and what's impacting on you and feeding that into the government at the time and anybody else that'll listen. But the majority of the work that we do, 80% of it, is really helping small businesses with the issues that they face, with finance, with the compliance they've got to put up with. I mean, Christ, anybody that's dealing with health and safety these days, I think we did a health and safety guide. I've seen the earliest one that the Forum did, and it was a tiny little pamphlet. Now it's about 1.5 inches thick. So we really try and help those businesses get through, and it's something we talked about over lunch. It's when you need somebody at the end of the phone just to ask what seemed like the daftest of questions. And after 40 years of being in existence, we probably know, and we've probably got a template somewhere or a bit of guidance. And if we haven't, we know who to speak to find that information. And that's what we do. So that's the Forum, and I'm very proud to lead the organisation. We're quite a small organisation. We've only got about 18,000 members. But we're not one of the bigger lobbying organisations, but it's all about practical guidance and help, and that's really what we're there to do. The pandemic was interesting. God, in more ways than one. The one thing and I'm going to start off with a negative, but I'm going to give you some solutions for it. The negative is very simple. Government on the whole and civil servants haven't got a bloody clue what a micro business is or what you're facing every day. And I know that's, a negative thing to say, but it's true. And what really worries me about it is, it's one thing being ignorant of these things if you're willing to learn and find out more, but they don't seem to have any intention to learn and find out more about micro businesses. In fact, very often the view is micro business is just big business, only smaller. And you compare to, which as you all know is absolute rubbish. Because most of you are out there and you're trying to do it all. You're trying to be the CEO, the marketer, the salesperson, the finance officer, the agent. You're juggling all these bloody things. And it isn't, you don't have the resources, you don't have the time. And, sorry folks, but they don't get it, okay? So just park that one for a minute. There are 3 things that I can say, and hopefully they're all positive. One of them is, I think the pandemic was a tipping point for digital technology and the use of technology by small businesses. A lot of the younger businesses were already doing it. A lot of our older members were. Ian and I were talking about this yesterday. If you didn't have a website, a lot of people have now got it. If you did have a website, you've actually realised it wasn't good enough and you've upgraded it. you've realised it's a static thing, and actually you need social media and conversations and content to drive people to that website. Teams, you know, Teams and Zoom, I kind of knew what they were. God, I've done more of those meetings and Chuck does exactly the same. We've done loads of using those, and actually, how do I put my background behind me when I'm on a Teams thing and Zoom and all that kind of stuff? Trading online, the story I always tell. There's a young lady got a little ice cream parlour in Knutsford down one of the little alleyways. Does really good business on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The rest of the time she didn't, but she thought, what can I do differently? So she started doing litre tubs of ice cream. Husband got a van, home deliveries in the area, website, started online trading, quadrupled her trade. So there were some positives that came out of that, but a lot of those positives were around that grasp of using, you know, all of you, you've got to use the technology that's there. You've got to think about content. You've got to think about owning it and how you use that. Big learning from this. The other one is a space. It's one thing. You want to start your business. How do you learn? Where's your sandbox? How do you trial these things? And we've got to make sure that in our towns and cities there are spaces where small businesses can set themselves up and start trading and make your mistakes and cock up, but do it cheaply, because you're going to make mistakes. We all do. Some of them horrendous, some of them less so. But we need those spaces, you know, old disused market halls, Scarborough, there was the conversation about, you know, bug the bloody landlord. Right, look, you've got all these empty spaces, you're losing rent. How about giving us one of your units where we can actually bring some businesses in and getting that community together? So using the spaces, and we've actually seen it in some areas where the landlords have started responding by turning bigger units into smaller ones, more affordable, doing them on short-term leases, you know, 6 months. The one I love was that, anybody been to Wapping Wharf in Bristol? Seen that, all the container units? Got to look it up online. They put a load of container units in, 6 month leases, and made them all into little shop units. It was going to be a short-term thing. It's still there now and it's growing. It's a great, but again, that community, which brings me to my third point. We in our own right are a very powerful community, this micro business community. And one thing that we saw in the pandemic is, my God, you helped each other. People got together, did little, I saw guides of saying all the online trading businesses in a town and pushing themselves and supporting each other. We've got to use the power of that community, because if government and civil servants aren't listening, we've got to take some of this on ourselves. And that leads me to my last point. We've all got positive stories to tell, and I hear them, but we're not very good sometimes at getting those out to government and those in power. We can show them the way, because at the moment they're not going to do it for us. So the one thing that I would say to all of you is, if you've got those positive stories, tell them. If you can't, get them to me. I'll put them out on the forum sites. We've got to start saying to government, look, this is the good stuff that micro businesses are doing, and you can replicate this. If you get behind it, if you support it, if you put, you know, money behind it, yes, but resources behind it, we really can make a difference. So the micro business community, I think, is the answer to my first negative point. We've got to make sure that we're using the power of those positive stories. Again, I'm going to, you know, Ian mentioned content when he was talking yesterday. That's great content, those stories. And we really should be telling them, feeding them into Bill, going, look, here's some ideas. We did this in a city and it really worked. So that's really where I'd like to finish off. It's almost a call to action, but tell your stories, because they're all very, very positive and strong ones that we can all learn from them. Thank you all very much. Brilliant.